All right, thank you so much, Steph. Let's begin here. Premier Doug Ford now in self-isolation after one of his staff members testing positive for COVID-19. So Ford in close contact with this staff member on Monday. He has since tested negative. His office says when Ford learned of the exposure, he immediately left the legislature and continues to self-isolate. Other staff members identified as close contacts, they have also gone into isolation. The premier says he will continue to work from home. Ford received his first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine on April the 9th. Meantime, the Ford government says it is now considering a paid sick leave program for essential workers after renewed calls from a number of experts, including the Science Advisory Table. Guilty on all charges. A historic ruling in the U.S. as former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin convicted on all charges in the death of George Floyd.
A lot of days that I prayed and I hoped and I was speaking everything into existence. I said I have faith that he will be convicted.
Members of Floyd's family say the move is a step in the right direction, but a lot of work still needs to be done. Chauvin convicted on all three charges, including second and third degree murder in the death of George Floyd last May. The case sparking worldwide protests and forcing police all over the globe to re-examine racism and bias. Thousands eagerly waiting. Felt a wave of relief when that verdict was read. And it was not just in Minneapolis, all across the U.S. Celebrations and cheers here in the wake of the conviction. But look at this. A group of around 100 demonstrators began marching from Barclays Center in New York City overnight in support of Floyd's family, and reaction also coming from the White House.
We still have work to do. We still must reform the system.
No one should be above the law. And today's verdict sends that message. But it's not enough.
And we will have ongoing coverage of the guilty verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial. Coming up, CNN's Daryl Forges is on the streets of Minneapolis. He's going to be joining us here on BT at 7:30 as well. We'll be talking to him again a couple hours later at 9:30 this morning. Now, we will continue to gather reaction here through the morning. Here in Canada, we're also feeling the impact and reacting today. City News reporter Adrian Gobriel speaking with a professor who hopes that this guilty verdict increases awareness about police brutality in Canada.
We believe that we don't have issues related to police use of force and racial bias in policing that afflict America, or at least not to the same extent. My hopes is that we as Canadians, our politicians, our police leaders and police officers, and the public generally will acknowledge what has happened here, acknowledge that Black, Indigenous, and other racialized people suffering from mental health and others, are subject to disproportionate use of force by the police.
And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau taking to Twitter, commenting on the verdict, saying systemic racism is still an ongoing battle despite the ruling that brought accountability for George Floyd's murder. Now, just minutes before the Chauvin verdict was released, another tragedy. A Black teenage girl fatally shot by police in Ohio. We do want to provide this warning to our viewers about what you are going to see. It is disturbing. Now, Columbus officers say that they were responding to a 911 call about an attempted stabbing. The victim, identified as 16-year-old Makia Bryant, taken to hospital in critical condition and was pronounced dead a short time later. Now, police released body cam footage of the incident overnight. It appears to show the teen with a knife threatening two others just before an officer firing 4 shots. The teen's death sparking outrage as hundreds of protesters taking to the streets. The officer involved in the shooting reportedly placed on paid administrative leave. What we know right now is a full investigation is underway. Now, there is a lot to cover here this morning. There is also a lot to process, and we want to know how you're doing. So coming up here, our BT family will be having a conversation, a very open conversation about the trial and the ongoing police shootings, and it's something that we want to share with you and your family. That is coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, and we'll also be discussing it here in You Sound Off coming up in minutes. Right now, your time is 6:09. Have you noticed there's less to watch on Netflix lately? A pandemic content drought possibly causing shares for the service to plunge. Get an explanation from Mike Apple next.